Hi everyone, I am recording a screencast video lecture on how to manually set up APA in a Word document. So this won't be very long, and this one is particular to a Mac. I tend to use my Mac for all my video lectures because it's much more difficult to record these on my PC laptop. So if I can get it working on the PC laptop, I will record a second video lecture on this that's specific to a PC, but there's not too many differences in Word for Mac versus Word on a PC when you are setting up documents in APA. Or MLA. So I've just opened up a default document here in my Word, and so when we're talking about APA, the first thing that you're going to want to do is set up your cover page. So the most important thing about, well, the most important thing, there's a lot of important things, but the APA is very notorious for the running header that comes at the top of not only the cover page but the rest of the document. So I'm going to talk about how to include the running header, and the thing about the running header that is either people forget or they're not quite sure how to do it is that on the cover page it actually says running head, and then on the rest of the document that the words running head are taken off of it. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm going to set up the running header for this entire document. So I'm going to first make sure that I've got two pages open so we can see how that's going to look on two pages. Okay, so I've got two pages there, and the way to get inside your header is I double click in the header space, and that opens it up for me, and then when I want to get out of there I double click outside of the header and that takes me out. Same thing with the footer, but we're not doing anything with footers, so you don't have to worry about footers at all. But the important thing to know about a Word document is, if I can show one full page here, and that's fine, that'll work, is that a Word document recognizes three distinct areas on the document, and that's the header space. I don't know what the exact term is for this. I just call it the body, and then the footer space down here. So these are three distinct spaces. So what you do in here will affect, all the headers in your document. Same thing with the footer, but what you do in the header won't affect your footer, and vice versa. And same thing with the body. Whatever you do in the body won't affect the header and the footer, and that includes font type, font size, anything like that, and that's a place where students sometimes also forget. So, and I'll make up a fake title for this example. And the one thing I always recommend that people do when working in Word is make sure you have your rulers turned on, just to make sure that you can see where your margins are. So the first thing I'm actually going to do is double check my margins. So because in APA we want 1 inch all the way around, and this is actually right now it's set at the default, so we don't, which is 1, 1, 1 1/4, 1 1/4, but we just want the quote-unquote normal, which is 1 inch all the way around. So I'm going to click that, so we have our correct APA margins, and then I'm going to go ahead and double click in that header space, and then the way we get the quote-unquote running head to only be on the cover page is you have to select this option called different first page. So when this up here in Word is called a ribbon, and depending on what you select or insert into a document, new options might populate in that purple color like you might have just seen. So when I opened up the header area, you can see that this header and footer section populated when as an option for me. So when I click on that, that gives me the option for different first page. If you set up your document initially, and I've done this many times, I'm actually amazed that I am remembering to do this first this time. But there's many times even when I've done video lectures on this type of thing, on setting up MLA, or even when I'm just setting up on APA or setting up an APA document, I'll forget to select the different first page. So if you set up your running header and then you have forgotten to select the different first page option, you're going to actually, when you go to select different first page, it's going to delete everything you have, and then you have to reset it all up. So that's why you want to do this first, so you're not wasting time and always trying to work smarter and not harder, though it's not always foolproof. And then you're going to enter a page number. The confusing thing about us calling it a header is there's always an option to insert a header, but these are kind of fancy. They're fancier than what APA or MLA want, so we don't ever actually use the header selections. We just insert a page number. If you're in a PC, you will also have the option between header, footer, and page number, but you will have the option under pages to select a variety of different types of page numbers, and the name for the one that you want if you're in a PC is called plain number 3. Plain number 3 just gives you just a page number on the right side of the header of your document. So we're going to insert the page number in the excuse me, I've got bad allergies today, into here, except it's not on the right side. So that's why I say this is how we set it up manually. And I always think it's a good idea to learn how to set things up manually, because that way you kind of know the back end tricks of how to do things. If you rely on anything that does it for you, you're kind of doing shortcuts and skipping things, which can also be helpful to know those things in certain contexts, but it's also helpful to know, well, if that's not working or if I need to modify something manually, how do I do that? So that's why it's useful to know how to do things manually. So what we want to do is we want to click back on home, because we want to justify this. So, and the justifications, right, or if you want left justification, center, or right to align the text right. So we're going to bump it over there, and that's going to put the page number where we want it. And this is where we write running head, and then I'm just going to use plain number 3 as a fake title. Okay, so that'll be my fake title, plain number 3 for page number on PC, just as a way to reinforce that. But before I do anything, because this can affect spacing, is even if you modify your text in the body to be Times New Roman size 12, because of those 3 distinct spaces in a Word document, it's not going to affect the font or font size that you have in your header. So right now you can see I'm at Cambria, which is a very common defaulted text. Sometimes Calibri is a common default text. So I want to make sure that I have my proper font and font size. So I'm going to go down to Times New Roman, which is not my favorite font, but that's what APA wants, so that's what we'll give it. And then select that, and then it's already at size 12. Sometimes it's defaulted at size 10 or size 11, so you just want to double check that. And then what we do is we space. So because the 1 has to be aligned to the right and the running head has to be aligned to the left, the way you do this is very simple. It's very low. It's like what I would call low tech. And you just hit the space. You're going to hit the space bar until the 1 drops down onto a second line. So we're going to hit, and you can kind of guess it, and I'm looking at, this as it's heading towards the margin, and I'm just going to bump it over, and as it gets closer, I'm just going to hit it slightly, and then once it goes down, I'm going to hit delete or the backspace so I can bump that up to get rid of that extra space, so everything is on the same line, and this is aligned at the 1-inch margin here, and this is aligned at the 1-inch margin here. So that's the running head for the cover page, and because we selected different first page, you have to do that a second time, but then this will be the header for the rest of the document. So the words running head only appear on that first page, and it is like this. It's capital R, and then everything's lowercase, colon, and then your entire title or part of your title. If it's too long to fit on here, then you need to shorten it. Like if I had like colon something 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 something, I would just put whatever's before the colon. So I'm going to do the same thing on the second page. So again, I need to go to header and footer, insert the page number, go back to home, align that to the right, and again, because it's a different first page, I have to change my font because now it's recognizing the header in the first page as different from the headers in the rest of the document. So I'm going to change that to Times New Roman. It's already at 12, and now we don't write running head, we just write this really bad title that I came up with, plain number 3 for page number on PC. So and then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do the spacing. I'm just hitting the space bar, and as it gets closer to the margin, I'm just going to hit it until the number 2 goes down, and then I hit delete or backspace depending on if you're on a PC or Mac, and then I click to get out of there. So then we've got running heads for all set up, and then if I were to go on a third page, we can see that, right? Our first page has running head, and our second page just has that, and our third page just has that. So that's how to do the the headers for APA. So now we're going to work on that 3-line bit of information that you want on your cover page, and these are centered, and what it is it's your name. So I'll just put Joe Smith. Oops, that's all caps. And then it's the name of the document. So plain number 3 for page number on PC, and say I had a longer title, how to set up APA on a Mac. And then you put your affiliation, your academic affiliation. So Embry-Riddle Aeronautical. I'm surprised I'm not spelling anything wrong. University. Okay, so I've got the information, but the things that are missing now are the fact that this is not double space and it's not centered in the document. So I'm just going to set up my spacing now. This is a really important thing to do because a lot of students don't do this. And I'm going to open what's called the paragraph dialog box. And the dialog boxes are boxes, and they're called dialog boxes because we want to have a dialogue with the software. So we want to have a dialogue with Word. And this looks the same on a PC. It's this like these lines with this like arrows with it going up and going down, and you always want to open up. This is just like default things that you can add, but you always want to open up like the extra options to actually open up the paragraph dialog box, and that's what this looks like. And the options are exactly the same on a PC. And the parts excuse me, that you want to focus on in the paragraph dialog box is the spacing section, this before, after, and then the line spacing. So if you've ever had a document where someone has been like, your line spacing is off, this is where you have forgotten to put in what you need for your document to be spaced correctly. So, and what you want is you want the before and after to be at 0. Sometimes it's defaulted at 0 and 10. And so you just have to go in there and change the after 10 to be 0, and then you want your line spacing to be double. I tend to work in single space until I'm ready to double space, but that's just me. You have to do what's best for you. What this does is it tells Word what you want to do when you hit the enter button, or if you don't hit the enter button. So for example, when you're doing your memo formatting and you have like, I'm going to blank on the different sections, right? But you have, name, subject, date, who it's to, that type of thing. Every time you write that, right, you write your name and then you hit enter, and then you have like who it's for, and then you hit enter, and then you have your subject and you hit enter. So every time you hit enter, you're telling Word, when I hit enter, I want this many spaces between those two lines. So if it's defaulted at 10, if the after part is defaulted at 10 or not at 0, if it's anything above or below 0, it's going to give not the type of spacing that we want, not just in APA, but in like memo formatting and anything like that. Very rarely I've never used spacing that's not 0, 0 in any documents that I've done. And then the line spacing at double. And I can do an example of that so you can see it. So we've got the double spacing, and then I just eyeball it to kind of see like, okay, that looks fine. Like that to me would be, it might not be mathematically in the center of the cover page, but it looks close enough. Like that might be a little bit better. APA used to have like, here's exactly how many double space enters you have to choose. It was like 6 or 7. I can't remember. It's been many years, but I haven't been able to find that information for quite a while. So now I just eyeball it. So that's it. That's it for the cover page. So then when you get to the second page, normally in APA, they call for an abstract page. You don't really have to worry about if you don't have an abstract, like I'm not going to mark you off for it. Abstracts are really for kind of longer documents that need an abstract. For the instruction manual, you don't need one, so you don't have to worry about that. I'm trying to recall off the top of my head if the technical report needs one or not, but it will say, and if there is an abstract page, I'll remind you. But if you have an abstract for APA, this is where it would go, but I'm not going to do it right now because it's not, you essentially just write abstract and then you write an abstract, and then you would start your document on the third page, but we're going to pretend that we have no abstract. So the thing that you do need to do is you, again, have to restate your title. So I'm just going to copy and paste because that's the easiest thing to do. So that I've just recopied and pasted this. Now the thing that I have forgotten to do is I have not changed my font to Times New Roman, which I just realized because I was like, that looks funny. So I just select it all and I'm going to change it to Times New Roman, and I'm just going to, I do this just because I like to double check everything. So now it's Times New Roman, and we already did that for the header, so we know it is. And then this is where you start writing your document. And that's for like a standard kind of essay setup. Your instruction manual, technical report might look different here. So you might instead do that memo setup and that I'm going to try to remember this. I apologize if this is wrong. And I have no idea what date it is today. I think it's March 4th. Okay. And I totally wrote my date wrong. Okay. If that's not perfect, I apologize. That's what I can remember from my memory. If you have a colon in your title and you don't like the way how it looks, you can always bump it like that. I personally like that better because it's easier to read. And then you would start, like writing, I imagine you might have a section title and then text after that, like introduction. And then you would, maybe boldface that and then talk, now I'm spelling things wrong. Right, and then you would just kind of move on into that. So just to give you an example of how the spacing differs if you don't enter that paragraph dialog box. So I've got that, I'm going to boldface these because I think that's always better. Just again for readability, for the way I'm all about document design. So and you can't ever change spacing unless things are selected. So that's why I'm selecting this. So I'm going to go back into that paragraph dialog box and I'm going to ask it to be 10. You can see how the spacing is bigger. Here, every time I pressed enter, the spacing is larger. So that's why we want to make sure the spacing is all uniform, and that's really so that I can't, okay, there we go. So, and that's because here I'm typing. I'm never hitting enter. And by modifying that before and after and spacing to 0 and 0, we now have uniform spacing between any time we press enter and then any spacing between lines where you're not hitting enter. So that's the one of the main benefits and how you go about setting up that uniform spacing. Okay, so that's pretty much everything. I went over the headers, setting up the cover page, reinforcing that you need to restate your title wherever you start your document. If you have an abstract, you would then do that after the abstract page. The spacing, the margins, the font and the font size. And then if you were to have a references page, you would start that on a brand new page, and then you would put references, and then you would start alphabetically listing your references here. So I'm not guessing there's going to be too many references, if any, for the instruction manual, which is fine. You're not required to have any sources, but for documents and projects in the future, you will be using some sources. So that's it. I just wanted to make this nice, short, and sweet on setting up APA manually. And if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me a message. Otherwise, I will talk to you guys later.